Hey everyone, my name is Julia and I'm the SGA Press Secretary here at Quince Orchard High School. On behalf of QOSGA, welcome to our 2019-2020 SMOB Forum. And a special thanks to Nate and Zoe for joining us. The role of SMOB is a very important one in Montgomery County, and as a part of the school board, the SMOB is responsible for voting on MCPS decisions with the student's perspective in mind. The SMOB also proposes his or her own resolution during board meetings and dedicates time to discuss policy he or she wants to see. Outside of board meetings, the SMOB attends Montgomery County Regional SGA meetings, Montgomery County Junior Council meetings, and meets with the SMOB Advisory Council. Beyond the policy-making process, the SMOB also visits schools across the county to hear what issues students think are prevalent. With that in mind, let's get started. First, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give an opening statement, then I'll ask them a series of questions, alternating who starts. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. If at any point anyone in the audience has a question they'd like to ask a candidate, they can go to tinyurl.com/askSMOB and submit their question. By virtue of a coin toss, Zoe will go first.
Hi, my name is Zoe Che, and I'm a junior up at Clarksburg High School. I'm ready to be your next student member of the board, and I want to represent you on the Board of Education. The main issue of my campaign is communication. I feel like for way too long, most of the students in the county don't really know or care about what the SMOB does. And that's a big problem. The student member of the board doesn't just represent all of the students at Quince Orchard, they represent all the students in Montgomery County, all 163,000. And yet the majority of them never seem to make contact with their SMOB face to face. I aim to change that during my tenure next year. I plan on visiting every high school and middle school in the county and understanding every school's concerns, whether that be in the up county or in the down county. Because I know that coming from Clarksburg, which is like in the middle of nowhere, I can't claim that I can represent every student's voices without knowing what your issues are in the county. On top of that, I plan on improving our school lunches, bringing back cheese dippers and tater tots and strawberry milk, plan on improving the Wi-Fi, and pushing to make sure that all of your voices are represented on the Board of Education. Please vote Zoe for SMOB, and I'll make sure that we have no decisions about us without us.
Sure, so hey everyone, my name is Nate. I'm a junior at Kennedy High School, and this year I've gotten to fight for you all as president of the county student government. And through these positions and through this campaign, I really want to brand the message of making sure that we bridge opportunity, not just among schools in this county, but also between social groups and different students that we see here in MCPS. And we can do this by creating this movement, this steadfast movement of every single one of you guys joining this campaign and standing up to say that we want to disrupt the status quo. And so the message of my campaign has been and will always continue to be that the zip code of your school should never determine the quality of your education. And I want to maintain this belief throughout this whole campaign by making sure that all of you guys join me in the fight to making sure that we bring driver's ed courses back to our high schools to bridge socioeconomic barriers, making sure that we bring ACES, which is a college access opportunities program, to every single high school in the MCPS, making sure that we expand the Minority Scholars Program to middle schools in this county, but also making sure that we include more LGBTQ, African Americans, Hispanics, and women into our English curriculum and curriculum in general. Because I believe that we can only learn in our classrooms when we have people that represent us learn from us, or we learn from them. And so I hope you all can join this campaign. I've been to almost every single middle and high school, and by the end of this campaign, I will be at every middle and high school. And I hope you all can join me in this fight for a better MCPS.
Cool. And now with that out of the way, time for questions. Parking lots at QO. Okay, we recently had issues with parking lots at QO, and have even resorted to taking up spaces on the basketball court, buying spaces from nearby stores. What would you do to prevent this issue from arising next year?
Sure, so I think one thing that we need to do as a student body is not only rely on our SMOB or the Board of Education, but to also work with our county council and see how we can get more funding for our capital improvements plan, and making sure that we look at models such as BCC, which has levels to their parking lots to alleviate this problem. And so hopefully when we revisit the capital improvements plan next year, what I plan on doing is making sure that we bring QO's voices to the Board of Education table and to the county council to say that we do have this problem in Montgomery County. There are a lot of kids that don't ride the ride-on buses that might carpool with their friends or drive themselves. And so we need to make sure that the infrastructure not only in QO is up to date and where it needs to be, but also these amenities that we have at our school needs to be as satisfactory as it can be. And so I hope to make sure that we bring QO's voices to the Board of Ed table to let us know that we do need these higher level parking lots that alleviate parking and those extra costs from outside sources, just as the stories that are next to you guys, just as you mentioned, because it's a problem when you have a lot of students which once again are carpooling, which we have to save the environment, and also are driving on their own. So something that I hope to do is making sure that you guys are at the board table for this.
All right, so I definitely know that parking is a big problem at basically all the high schools in the county. If y'all are up to date on the situation at Whitman, they will literally have no parking spots next year, and that's a big problem. I see this around the county. I see this as I visit all 25 of our high schools. So my big plan is pushing for the expansion of ride-on access and making sure that students can take the ride-on in the morning to schools and taking alternative routes to schools. I've actually been pushing for the expansion of the Kids Ride Free program in front of the county council. I've testified for that actually just this April 10th. And we have allies on the county council that will certainly push that forward. And I'm very optimistic that we can get that through, so that students do have the option to take ride-on buses and buses that aren't just the overcrowded school buses to school. And in addition, making sure that those routes are available no matter where you are. Like I know that Quince Orchard is in a very bustling metropolitan area, and buses drive through here all the time. But some schools don't have that kind of accessibility. At Clarksburg, we only have at least 75 that goes to Clarksburg. So in a nutshell, I plan on more expanding ride-on access, making sure it's free in the mornings, making sure that no matter where you are in the county, you can take that bus to school, and just making sure that you have alternative routes of getting to school that don't just include driving a car or walking.
All right. Next question. How could you improve lighting and other needed renovations in our gyms and exercise facilities?
So we definitely need to make sure that our infrastructure is up to date across all schools. All too often we see, flickering lights that never come on, and that's because the method of fixing our lights is broken. It's a fragmented system. The way that gymnasium lights work specifically is schools often wait until a significant portion of their lights go out, and then only then do they call in a mechanic to change them so that they can change them all in one foul swoop. And meanwhile, students have to be exercising in the dark, and they can't see their equipment. And that's a big problem. We need to make sure our mechanics are frequently visiting our schools, that our infrastructure is up to date at all of our buildings, that students have lighting, that they can see their classwork, that they can see where they are in the gymnasium, and that all in all, students have a modern facility to be educated in.
Sure. So it's not just QO which is also having this problem. It's my school too, and it's many other middle schools in this area as well. And I think a big portion that contributes to that problem is communication, and just the bridge between students, between the administration, between central office, and just as Zoe mentioned, our mechanics in our schools and how they rotate around to adjacent schools. And so I hope we could fix the transparency problem that we're having by making sure that all of you guys and the administration as well has a clear system of where you're able to bring your complaints to, so that, let's say, okay, this is or this is a wrong thing in our school. This infrastructure problem is happening. Okay, well, I know exactly who to reach out to. I know that I can't do that in my school because I would not know who to reach out to, and even if I reached out to my administration, they're amazing people. I don't think anything would happen immediately or in the near future. And that's a problem between communication, and you can only imagine what it looks like at our middle school levels, especially when kids don't really know what the environment looks like or how great their schools can be outside their own middle school. And so this is one thing that's continuous around our system, and I hope to make sure that we work with central office to bridge this transparency and communication barrier within our schools, so that way the next time that you guys do have a complaint, just like infrastructure, you know exactly who to reach out to in the building and the Board of Education as well.
All right, the next question. What could you do to improve resources such as Promethean boards and Chromebooks across the county?
Sure. Okay, so Fading Promethean boards has always been one of my bigger things because I have a terrible eyesight. I could sort of barely see you guys right now, and I lost my glasses too. And so this has really been something where I sit even in the middle of the classroom and I can barely see the Promethean board, especially since it's one of those fading ones. Same with our broken Chromebooks that are happening in our schools. And I think that this renewal process that we have as of right now is not where it can be, especially for our elementary schools as well, which is why I hope to make sure that our technicians in our schools are consistently making sure that they're diving into the classrooms, keeping that transparent communication between the teachers and the administration, saying this is what's happening in our schools. And so I hope to make sure that you guys could reach out to me saying, hey, well, I see this at QO. All the Chromebooks, or at least half of the Chromebooks in my school, are really broken, they're messed up, and the Promethean boards are failing. Is this something that you guys can fight for in the capital improvements plan? Is this something that you guys can pressure our administration to look into just a bit more? I want to be that tool for you guys, and I need you guys to join me and let your friends know that communication is never a barrier, so that way those small things that we see happening can be solved just by a simple message or an email as well.
Right, so right now in a lot of schools around the county, we have more Chromebooks than we have students, which makes literally no sense. So I plan on redistributing our Chromebooks, making sure that at least starting at the middle school level, we have one Chromebook per student, that we have a Chromebook rental program, that every student has their own Chromebook, because let's be real, we've all been in a situation where we get a Chromebook and maybe the light's too dim, maybe the keyboard's broken, maybe the mouse pad doesn't work. I had a situation last year where someone changed the Chromebook to Polish and nobody could change it back because we couldn't read the settings. Well, if everybody has their own Chromebook, nobody has to worry about that, right? You take care of your own technology. Students who maybe don't have a computer at home can take that Chromebook home and work on their assignments from there. So a Chromebook rental program is what I plan on implementing, starting with the middle school level, but then moving up to the high school level because we have the resources to make that happen. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy and the multi-level facets of central office just hasn't been operating in a way that makes us makes that convenient. So I plan on restructuring that and making sure that that is a option that is available to all students, and that all students have their own Chromebook, nobody has to worry about broken technology, and that we can always be assured that the technology is there and a resource for us to utilize in our classes.
We have a question from the audience, Mr. Davis.
Sorry, I've been wondering. Yeah, been wondering this for a while. As a teacher, Promethean is not a good software. It's very outdated. It does not work well. Like, you can't even make a table in Promethean software. That seems like something it should be able to do. Whereas there are other interactive whiteboard companies that have substantially more features for approximately the same cost. Would you guys be interested in looking into not just replacing old technology, but considering new technology avenues that might actually be cheaper and more effective for both students and teachers?
So, I mean, not just that I wanted to mention, but we also have so many subscription services from MCPS that are not advertised whatsoever. So, for example, so many Adobe services, which would be a great replacement to Promethean software in our schools, are in our computers, but are not used or advertised whatsoever. There's Photoshop, there's Premiere, there's After Effects, all these things that Montgomery County pays for that cost a ton of money at home. I would have never heard about it if I never looked into it or had a tech class. That's a problem, and I'd definitely be interested into seeing how we could transition into a smooth and better process and program, because what it is right now is pretty terrible.
I think that's a great point. I actually haven't heard that much, but I mean, if it saves us money in the long run, it'd be pretty stupid not to switch to it. So that's definitely looking into other options aside from the same old is definitely something that we should look into. If it saves us money, even more so, and just making sure that our resources are up to date. Because when I hear teachers say that Promethean is outdated, that breaks my heart a little.
It's horrible garbage. That's 15 years garbage. Personal opinion.
On YouTube.
Better than the Elmo.
Safety of students is obviously a big concern for schools across the county. Physical fights are a problem that schools are always trying to prevent. What are your plans involving security and safety?
Sure. I think we should definitely increase our work size of security guards in our facility and in all of our schools, including middle and elementary, because sometimes they're just very understaffed and fights might break out in the hallway and there might literally not be enough security guards to put an end to that. So that's something I definitely plan on focusing on. In terms of more general security features, some of our schools have been rolling out like magnet strips that you slip onto the door, and then that way, if we had to go into a lockdown drill, we would just strip it off, and then the doors would immediately lock without having teachers fumble for keys. And that is a integral security feature that we should be pushing out to all of our schools. And I know a lot of schools already have it, but not all of them. I think Quince Orchard does, right?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, so not all of them do, unfortunately. So that's something that we need to look into, making sure that all of our schools are very safe, making sure that in the case of an emergency, everybody knows what to do. We need to clarify procedures. We just started rolling out the lockdown with options drill this year, and it was very vague. It left a lot of students asking questions, especially if you're in the portable. What are you going to do? We need to make sure that we clarify procedure, that no matter where you are in the building, no matter what the situation is, every student knows what to do, how to do it, and they are assured that they are secure in their environment.
Sure. Piggybacking. It's been a long day. Piggybacking off of what Zoe just mentioned, we also definitely need to expand our reverse evacuations and active shooter drills. But it's not just that. One thing that I've noticed as I've gotten into so many of these schools is that a few of them don't have guided access ways. So when you open the front, I think QO doesn't even as well, right? When you open the front door of this school, most schools have a guided path where you directly have to go through the main office before you get into the school. And that's been a safety thing, an element that's been added to so many of these schools. But I also think that we need to break the stigma that's happening in so many of our schools and address the mental health epidemic that's happening, and also address the bias and racial discrimination that's happening in our schools as well. That's a place to start off, so that way we can address the fights that's happening, making sure that teachers have cultural competency training, making sure that middle schoolers starting at the middle school level have mental illness awareness in their health curriculum. I mean, we just have to break down these things at the younger levels, so we never have to consider how we have to work with the fight, right? Because we have to be proactive rather than reactive, and so it's something that I've really gotten to see, especially our school safety problems, as I've worked with Mocha for Change and March for Our Lives, and so I hope to continue that next year.
All right. Next question. Recently, conversations and rumors have been going around about school lines changing in the upcoming years. There are mixed emotions. How do you feel about this?
Sure. So I know that we have to wait up until the actual boundary and facilities assessment study comes back to really determine our results. But I am over here making my argument saying that, one, we have elementary schools right next to each other. For example, there is a Twin Brook situation, and there is elementary schools and middle schools at this level in this part of the county that are right next to each other, might be within a mile or 2 miles, but one school will have 90% of students in free and reduced meals, and another will have like 15. I mean, where's the common sense in that when we have to eliminate the socioeconomic barriers that are happening in our schools and the racial barriers in our schools as well, and cultural diversity is something that we need to push for, right? Especially at the adjacent level. With this study, the myth or the argument has been that we're going to bus kids 30 minutes away, when that is exactly the opposite that we're trying to do. We're trying to work within your communities. There are these community barriers and problems that are happening within our school that I hope to be a strong voice on the board for. Just as I mentioned, it's at the smaller level, the elementary school level, where elementary schools might be a mile apart, same with high schools and middle schools. We need to make sure that we're evening out the playing field with our schools as we rebuild and remodel schools and look at the adjacent populations and how we could properly balance everything within the school environment.
Right, so much like Nate, I'm very in favor of a redrawing of our boundaries, and let me tell you why, right? Like, Quince Orchard is over capacity, but it borders Watkinsville and Gaithersburg, both of which are under capacity, and Wooten, which is right at capacity. So as a result, we have these major discrepancies of capacities in our building, of class sizes, of students not getting the one-on-one support that they need in their classrooms. And it's something that we could easily change with a few inch shifts in our boundaries. As Nate brought up, one of the main arguments against it is busing, right? Nobody wants to be sent 30 minutes away to a school when they live right next to another school, right? You guys don't want that. I don't want that either. Nobody wants that. We are thinking about just minor shifts to the boundary, shifts where just one little, maybe a couple of neighborhoods over would totally revolutionize the demographic makeup and the population size as well of schools. I was at Redland and Shady Grove just today, and Redland is the second smallest middle school in the county, and Shady Grove is almost over capacity. So just those little shifts right there, making sure that our schools are equitable, that every student gets that individualistic support that they need. And no matter where you are in the county, you are getting equal support and you have an equal shot at an excellent education. That's the goal of this boundary study.
All right. Next question is about counseling and mental health. How do you plan to increase access as the conversation about the importance of mental health increases? What steps would you take to increase access to mental health professionals and services in school?
So first of all, my main priority, and the easiest thing that we can take right now, is making sure that our counselors are available to us. Right now, and we know this, they're overburdened by scheduling in the middle of the semester, they're overburdened by college recommendations at the beginning, right? And they're oftentimes just walled off from us. We can't go talk to them because, oh, your counselor's at a meeting, oh, your counselor's not here right now. And that's something I totally want to change. I want to take those responsibilities and reassign it to other personnel in the building, making sure that you're always the number one priority of your counselors. I also want to make sure that our school psychologists are a public face in their community, because right now every middle and high school in the county has a school psychologist. And sometimes they may rotate, but they still are available to you in your building. But most of the students in the county don't know that they even exist, let alone that they're in their own building. So we need to make sure that those school psychologists are available to you, that those school psychologists advertise their office hours when they're in the building and how you can reach them. And lastly, I want to expand wellness centers to all of our schools around the county. Right now they only exist at 4 high schools: Watkins Mill, Northwood, Gaithersburg, and Wheaton. But mental health isn't just an issue at those 4 high schools. We have to make sure that wellness centers and that therapists and that mental health help is available no matter where you are in the county, because mental health is a crisis. It's a growing crisis right now, and we need to make sure that every student has the resources available to them to combat that crisis.
Sure, so also one of the main planks, part of my mental health platform, not only with the middle school health curriculum, just as I was mentioning, but also the wellness centers in our high schools. But I think, or actually one thing that I was able to get done at one of the past county's student government executive board meetings was have a member from central office really talk to us about his campaign to destigmatize mental health in our schools and all of those stigmas and barriers that are happening within the environment, the poster campaign, and we were trying to really get to the root as to how we could break down language barriers that might cause a student from not engaging in these activities. But not just that, we also need to make sure that, when we have students and school environments that, need access to a counselor or a school psychologist, that they are readily available. But, we also have to understand that students might not even know who their counselor is. And so they're always friends with, your SGA advisor or your teacher, and that's who trusted personnel should be. But we also have to recognize that a lot of people in the school environment are not given the same trainings that a teacher is given. And so we have to make sure that everybody that engages with the student in a school is given the same trainings as the teacher, so that way you can rely on them in sensitive situations, especially when your counselor is not there, and everything along those lines. We have to make sure that everybody who is in the building as a staff is someone who's accessible to you and is trained to mentally and emotionally help you as well.
Many students have difficult time traveling to and from school. For example, there's a crossway near QL in Copen Meadow Drive and 28 that doesn't have a light, and it's very dangerous when people go to school and work every morning because there's always countless cars going in different directions. How would you address issues like these?
Sure. So me and Zoe are going to 100% agree on this. The ride-on transit system is core to this problem, right? I use Metrobus and ride-on almost everywhere, especially because sadly I'm not whipping yet. So this is something where, just as we've been working with the county council, making sure that, wherever you are in this county, transit should be accessible to you. That's how you alleviate some of those problems and safety concerns that are happening in our communities, but also making sure that when you guys have your school buses, that not only are you, actually, by show of hands, do you guys take your school buses?
Okay.
Okay, I mean, that's something that says a lot, right? And so you should be able to get effectively to school on time and whenever you need to through two ways. That if you didn't have a car, because a lot of students don't have the money for a car, don't have the friends which drive cars, so the two ways that the county should be providing, first, that I believe should be a core root to this problem, is our ride-on transit system and also school buses. But that also means that we, as a student body, need to be a collective force to the county council saying that there are these problems in our streets, right? There are these problems that the stoplights are not there where they need to be, that the walkways are not there where we need to be, or where they need to be. We will come around, when you guys join me on this campaign, then we will be able to tell the county council that these are the problems, and you guys need to work on these transit, safety, and pedestrian issues that are happening in our communities.
All right. And Zoe?
Yeah, so I won't repeat everything they said because we are both very in favor of the ride-on. I took the 56 here. I take it everywhere. So, but I'm glad you brought up pedestrian safety because that's really important. But at the same time, it's a little bit beyond the scope of the Board of Education, and that kind of piggybacks on my big idea of making sure that the SMOB isn't just an advocate for you on the Board of Education, right? The student member of the board is the only student elected official across the county, and that means they have a larger responsibility. They have a responsibility to work with the county council, as I've been doing for the past year for transportation issues. They have a responsibility to make your voice heard on even the state level, just so much beyond the Board of Education, and that's what I plan on doing. Actually, Montgomery County adopted either this past year or 2 years ago Vision Zero, which is the idea that we will have 0 pedestrian and vehicle fatalities by 2030. I'm a part of the ambassador program to make sure that it's rolled out as soon as possible. So I've been working with the county council on pedestrian issues. I've been working with the Act Transit Committee for pedestrian safety, and I've been on this fight to make sure that our students have a safe and accessible way of getting to school, and it's a fight that I've been fighting for multiple years, and I will continue to fight on the Board of Education next year. And we also need to make sure that our school buses, I know none of you guys said that you wrote it, but that our school buses are safe. Sometimes they stop in the middle of the road where it's unsafe to cross. There was actually a pedestrian fatality at a Kennedy High School incident, and we just need to make sure that we're redrawing our school bus routes and that our school buses and our ride-on and our sidewalks are all safe and accessible to pedestrians.
Alrighty. Are there any questions from the audience?
So, at this school, our buses are very overcrowded. How do you plan to help with that and to change that?
I'm glad you mentioned that because there's a lot of schools that have overcrowded buses, but central office refuses to acknowledge the issue. And we've actually been told to my face, like, oh no, none of our buses are overcrowded, but that's not true. So that's where the communication part plays in, right? I've mentioned before that communication is my #1 issue. That's why I'm visiting every high school and middle school in the county, to hear from you, to understand what your concerns are here every day. So when I hear Quince Orchard, Blair, Tilden students telling me, hey, our buses are overcrowded, people are standing, people are sitting in each other's laps, people are sitting in the aisle, that's information I can take back to central office and give tangible evidence. I have this many students telling me that they cannot ride the bus because it is way too overcrowded. And if you can send in pictures, documented evidence, that strengthens that case. But the point is that I need to be here for you, for all the students from Montgomery County, and understanding what your concerns are, whether it be buses or whether it be broken lights, and understanding what the issues are at Quince Orchard, so I can take your feedback right back to central office and we can get to work on solving those issues.
Sure. So the past 5 years, I've probably sat and on the ground sometimes and squeezing and with 2 other people in a 2-person seat. And so one thing that I hope to do and that I've actually really noticed after listening to so many students is that there will be buses that have routes that are not too far from each other, but one bus will have 10 kids on it while another will have 40. right? And that's a transparency and communication problem within our schools, administration, and central office. Because while they project the routes at the beginning of the year, they're likely never revisited after the beginning of the year because nobody is having that consistent communication saying our route is full, our route is overcrowded. And so that's why I hope to work with you guys. And I'll take this back for sure to make sure that we talk with administration and the transportation portion of central office saying, hey, well, there are these two bus routes that are, next to each other, but one bus is way well overcrowded than the other. Is there any way or anything that you guys could do to fix the routes, to fix the bus lines, to figure out how we could alleviate the overcrowding on one school bus versus another? I've had this problem at my school. I hate it, and not only do I hate it, it's a safety hazard and concern. So that's something where you guys would get to work with me to work with central office and pressure administrations as well to bring that communication, those complaints to the places that it needs to be.
All right. Any other questions? Kendall?
I have another one about like the bus situation. I don't know if there's a rule about this. I don't know much about it. But when I went to middle school, when I would go home with my friends, there would be certain buses that go like straight to their houses to pick them up, or like really near their houses. But so I walk to school. It takes me like 15 minutes. My sister goes to Lakelands Park, so obviously she can't walk in the morning. She's kind of far. But her walk to the bus stop is like the length of my walk to school, so she hates taking the bus because then she has to leave early and then spend like another 20 minutes on the bus or 15 minutes like going to other stops. I don't know like the rules on that or anything, but is there anything we can do to like change like accessibility, I guess, to where it's more like easy to get to the buses?
Yes, and just as you had that problem right there, the fact that you probably don't know who to contact in your school, or the fact that you probably aren't able to really work off of that complaint is the problem. And so what I hope, or what I will be doing with you guys is once again bringing that concern back to those which get to work with the chief operating officer and those which get to work under him within the bus routes. But it's just something that we have to be more consistent with, right? Because when we create these routes, they're working off of projections. They're working off of numbers. Sometimes the stats that are not into the numbers when they create these routes are how many students will be carpooling or going with their mother or father. How many students might be riding with their sister or walk just because they don't need it. Or they might be taking the school bus. A lot of these numbers are based off of houses and the bus lines and where it needs to be based off of the miles from your school. But they're not worked off of that after what's not really much whatsoever, and so I'll definitely bring that back to see how we could revisit this consistent problem within these overcrowding schools, because once again the numbers that are mostly not taken into account when creating these lines or revisiting them is the students that are carpooling, the students that are going with their parents, or other modes of transportation other than school buses. And so that's something where, now that you've mentioned it to me, we will work upon that.
Yeah, so, there's a lot we can change there. So, the Board of Education doesn't design the bus routes. That's all central office's job, so they would, work under us. But a lot of data and a lot of numbers go into compiling what we do for our bus routes. And, oftentimes, we end up overlooking the individual stories, like the one that you just mentioned, right? And MCBS is just like, whatever, it's just one kid, whatever, they'll walk for 15 minutes. But we know that those people can't be overlooked, right? We have 163,000 kids, 500 square miles of county. It's a lot of data, but when we have that established connection, when I'm visiting your school, when you tell me that story to me, we can take that back. We can say, look, nobody should be walking 15 minutes to a bus stop, only to spend another 15 minutes on the bus. I have to walk 5 minutes to my bus stop, which isn't nearly as extreme as yours. But the fact that some kids have a bus that goes directly to their house, that's an equitability issue. And that's something that we will take back and we will work on the Board of Education and Central Office next year.
All right. Dawson.
So I think this is similar to one of the questions you mentioned earlier. But so there's this area near QO, and it doesn't have a light. So people are just going this way and they're going that way. But the reason on the other side, there is a light and the traffic there is terrible. So what some students do is like they go this way and then they take like a U-turn there. But it's very dangerous because like there's like tons of cars going this way. And there's also like a small neighborhood that comes out that way. So there's literally like 5 cars stuck here because one's going this way, one's going that way, and then like it's like very dangerous. And this happens like every morning. And I've heard I talked about this to my friend, and then she said a lot of people complain about this too, and they want to put a light there, but apparently they can't because there's like too many lights there or something. I don't know. That's
There's already a light there. You just can't make a left turn.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think that's really bad because there's also no sidewalk there, and then there's like a neighborhood here, and Ridgeview is coming this way, so all the middle schoolers who live in that neighborhood have to walk across the street where there's no sidewalk, and they just kind of have to wait until like the red light here comes on, and they just walk. But that's still really dangerous. So like,
This is a mess, but yeah.
so how do you plan on addressing that?
I mean, yeah, it's a pain in the butt. Unfortunately, a lot of our streets aren't designed with pedestrians in mind. And while the Board of Education can't really do anything about that because it's not their job, I mentioned before that I've been working with the County Council on pedestrian issues. That's something that I will continue to do next year. So just taking those individual concerns and seeing these specific situations where we see this obvious hazard for pedestrians and for people making that U-turn, we need to take that back and we need to start revisiting the designs of some of our roads, making sure that safety is our priority, not efficiency, not expediency, and that, you know, we do hit that Vision Zero goal, that we do get 0 pedestrian fatalities and vehicle fatalities by 2030, and situations like that is what we're hoping to take back and what we're hoping to improve. So while that wouldn't necessarily play into my role as a student member of the board per se, it would play into my role as a lobbyist to the county council and as a Vision Zero ambassador, which is something I've already been fighting for. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I was also just going to mention the SMOB doesn't directly handle those type of those type of transportation issues. But yet again, you know, if the Board of Education and central office handles students and school buses and local transportation issues about walking and our schools, and if the county council handles parents driving or just community members and their transportation issues in the community, then where are the students which have community issues, you know, where is that communication going to go to? And that's where I'd be your voice for you guys, and that's where we would be, just as you know, Zoe mentioned, a lobbying force to the county council, a disrupting force into what can happen in our schools, and an unsettling force in the politics and the stuff that's happening in our school system, saying that, you know, we often use these roads more than others do, right? But, you know, we're younger, we're, you know, just now into what's happening in society, and if we see this as something that's now normal, that's a problem. And that's where you guys have to step in and fix it. But, you know, that communication that you have is what thousands of other students don't have. And so that's how I'd be here with you guys. Not just here, but, you know, you guys, I hope to create some form of communication where any student in this county, whether it be as they sign up on or log in their Chromebook and something pops up in the toolbar or something like that, would reach out to, you know, me or central office and bring those concerns directly back to the people that make them or fix them.
Just so that QO students are aware, administration's aware of the U-turn issue and is very concerned about it as well. And they've been trying to address that with the county. Don't know if it's making traction, but yeah.
Well. Sam, question?
Okay, so you both have talked about what you want to do at SMOB, but what I want to know is why do you want to be SMOB?
Why do we want to be SMOB?
Yeah.
Do you want a little more time for that question? I feel like you guys have been like rushing.
That can be
Sure.
our last question if you want.
Well, I have a question after that.
No, I mean,
But,
our
okay.
closing question, but yeah.
Okay, let's just do that.
So yeah, I mean, I originally got into advocacy because my friends in ESOL were so neglected, and this was when I started fighting for you guys when I had no hair, and so that's originally why I got in, right? I noticed this systemic problem in our schools where race would be a barrier to education, where your religion, if you had a yarmulke or a hijab, that'd be a barrier to success in your education. Or if you were a female versus a guy, that'd be a barrier to success in your education. I went to one of the most, or I still do go to one of the most neglected schools in our county, and I was just tired of hearing this stuff and noticing how, one, there hasn't been an African American SMOB in over 14 years or so, or 13 years, and that's a problem in our school system. And also realizing that the issues that are plaguing some of our most dense areas in our school systems aren't really represented on because the people that represent us did not go through the same problems that we've been through. And so I really got in this because I noticed that there was just a troubling issue knowing that, my non-English speaking friends, which, by the way, even if you don't speak or if you're not a non-English speaking student, that does not mean that you're any less knowledgeable than any other student in your school building. I've just noticed that these things, and that's why I'm trying to eliminate these barriers in our school system just by talking about it at the bare minimum. I don't need a position to really fight on these issues, but I really do at least want to brand them out and headline them to 90,000 students, because even if one more student gets my message, then that'll mean the most.
Well, communication is the number one issue of my campaign for a reason. I got into advocacy super late because I didn't know about anything. We talked about how QO has kind of been isolated in the past, and I feel that at Clarksburg too. Like, I had no idea what MCR was, the county SGA. I had no idea what MCJC was, which is the county middle school SGA. I had no idea what the SMOB did. Like, most of the students in the county, I thought it was a joke office, right? Like, oh, we vote for somebody, and then it's just the next Ivy League kid, right? That's not the case. Turns out they have full voting rights. And turns out they're one of 2 Maryland SMOBs that have full voting rights. And when I learned that, I was infuriated that nobody had told me before. Every year we see students in our school buildings all the time have issues, right? Our bathrooms are trash. The food is garbage. The lights are off, right? We have these issues, and MCPS does something stupid, and nobody knows to who to turn. Remember when we got rid of Edline, and everyone was like, what's going on? Yeah. Like, everybody was mad. The teachers were mad. The students were mad. Where was the SMOB then? Why was the Board of Education not reaching out to us? Why was nobody telling us what was going on? And that's why I'm running to be your next student member of the board. So I can bring your voices to the table. So I can be an open ear for you on the Board of Ed. So when MCPS does something stupid, which they sometimes do, right, at least you can have a response back. Why this happened? How did it happen? And that at least this is a transparent system that we have that hasn't been shrouded in secrecy for way too long as it already has. So just making sure that every student's voice is brought to the table, that's why I'm running for student member of the board.
Any other questions from the audience?
I don't want to take up time because I'm leaving, but I'll ask my question. So I am not a huge fan of starting after Labor Day. And neither neither are a lot of the students and a lot of the teachers I know, especially at the high school level. So I take a lot of AP classes, and so do a lot of my friends, and we get weeks less to prepare than the students around the country who take the exam on the same day that we do. And then we get less weeks to prepare, and then we have to spend weeks after the exam just sitting around. Last year I took 6 AP classes. So after the exams, I just spent weeks in school sitting around when I could have had those weeks at the beginning of the year to prepare for my exam. So if you're not a fan of that, what are you going to do about it? And if you are, why do you think that starting after Labor Day is a good idea?
Jesus. All right. I can't relate to taking 6 AP classes. I'm only taking 4 right now. But still, right? I think the main reason a lot of people were ticked off by the change was spring break, right? Which is right around the corner. It's now 4 days instead of 2 weeks. And oops, thanks, Governor Hogan. But thankfully, great news, it's a override of that has worked its way through the state legislature, which means that next year we will be once again free to decide our own calendar, of course with the limitation of 180 days and certain days off for the professional days. But the great news is that power has been vested back into the Board of Education. So not next year, because next year's calendar has already been decided, but 2 years from now, We can get a longer spring break. We can look into starting before Labor Day so that students that are taking AP and IB exams have that extra time, and just bringing this calendar back to what it was before it ticked everybody off. So I hear you. I'm super excited because now it's back in our hands, and Hogan made a dumb decision. Now it's overturned. So woo woo. All right.
Yeah, it's overturned. So it's straightforward. And so I think one thing that we have to also recognize is that our governor was really sacrificing business and money over proper education. And that's something that's really been really sickening. And thank God that our state legislature passed that overriding bill. So next year, I mean, we just have to champion once again a calendar that makes sure that we include all of the necessary holidays and religious holidays that we need, and also gives us time to prepare for those AP exams, just as you were mentioning. It's something that we just have to. I don't know if I can say much. The calendar is open now up to our voices, but I need you guys to really help me understand what holidays we need to make sure that are in our calendar for next year that we need to really account for. And we just have to push it all the way to the end. You guys should be the forefront, not business or money. And so let's have a great calendar. I think once we'll all be graduated, except for the freshmen, because our calendars will affect the year after.
All right. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I don't know if you can really do anything about this if this is in your jurisdiction, but from what I've heard, when we do standardized testing for the county, that if the more students that the school that does better gets more funding than the schools that do worse. How do you, and are you planning to change how funding works in Montgomery County?
Yes, and it's not just standardized tests. It's also, just imagine how it is for a student which pays, or which has a family which pays $10,000 for their SAT exam. And a student like me which has no money for that. That's just something where there's that barrier, and just as I mentioned, the zip code of your school should not determine the quality of your education. And so when we have those things in schools that academically achieve higher, we also have to look at the root of the problem as to why schools are not academically achieving, right? Why schools are, or why there's a direct correlation between students that are in free and reduced meals, between African Americans, and between a poorly achieving school. The numbers are there, but we are ignoring it because I don't know why we're ignoring it, but that's the force that I hope to bring to the Board of Education, to not ignore that stuff, right? While so many amazing schools in this county are privileged to have an amazing and thriving teacher workforce programs in their schools, there are so many schools that are really suffering in our school system. That's what's overlooked, and the marginalized is what I hope to really advocate and push for at the start of my term. So just making sure that we eliminate those barriers with more programs, just as I mentioned, ACEs, and more tutoring programs like what we can have in our schools, and more mentoring programs like the Minority Scholars Program.
Any other questions?
Wait.
I'm so sorry. That's my fault. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay, yeah, so state funding is kind of a pain. You're right. That's up to the state, because that's most standardized tests that we take are state assessed. The MISA, the PARC, the MAP, all that stuff, that's all administered by the state, and it's kind of garbage, but there's not much we can do about it. But I did mention that the role of the SMOB goes beyond the Montgomery County Board of Education, right? It goes to the state level Board of Education, and it goes to the county council, and it goes to the state delegates to make sure that we're perpetrating our Montgomery County student issues no matter where we are, what level of government we're at. So I'll do my best to make sure that funding is redistributed at the state level, but there's not much we can do there. But at the county level, for sure, we need to make sure that our county is redistributed on a needs basis, that the schools that are suffering the most are getting more resources, because those students can't afford to have those resources outside of school because their family just doesn't make enough. And that's an unfortunate reality we have to confront, and the school system should be the equalizer of our education, making sure that our schools are leveling the playing field, and that, like Nate mentioned, no matter where you are in Montgomery County, MCPS gives you that opportunity to have an equal shot at a higher education. And that's why we need to make sure that our funding reflects that. That schools that have that students who have less resources outside of schools have more support inside the school facility. And that's something I plan on prioritizing in the budget next year.
Sam.
Okay, I'm just curious to know. So I hate progress checks,
T.
and I don't know where you guys stand on that.
Okay, so testing's a mess. It all started, give me a few hands, like, how do you guys feel about final exams? Yay, nay? Yay?
I'm sorry, y'all, but we need them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm not in the minority here. We got rid of final exams 2 years ago, and it was a really, really dumb mistake because now people are going into college and they're like, what's going on? Montgomery County thought we were getting less testing, but instead we got more progress checks, more frequent testing, and it's just a pain in the butt for everybody. So I'm going to try my best to push to bring final exams back because I think that that's an integral assessment that prepares us for college, which is kind of what high school is supposed to be doing, and that progress checks and what we used to have RQAs, they are not an accurate reflection of our academic standing. They take a huge portion of our grade, and if you mess it up once, it's like, whoops, my bad, and you can't get that back. So pushing to get rid of those quarterly assessment and bring back final exams, which do accurately prepare us for the higher education, that is something I plan on pushing for. But it's one voice against the 7 other old people. So no promises there. Like that's one thing I won't promise you. But I can assure you that I hear you, I sympathize with you, I feel that, and we're going to be doing the best we can to bring those back.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that, I completely agree with you, progress checks are not an accurate reflection, or they're just not good whatsoever. I put it in simpler terms, right? And I mean, just one thing that we also have to recognize is that so is the 50% rule in our school system, right? I mean, although that is really helping me out, which is something that's great, that I really like, I mean, you just have to imagine how when students are in college and I'm getting a lot of, of my college friends saying, dude, if I take a test and if I fail, I literally get like a 20%. Like there's no moving around that, right? And so these are the things that Montgomery County has tried doing to make themselves look better on paper, and that's the problem, right? At the top of that voter guide, I'm not sure if you guys got it yet, that paper that has both of our profiles, I literally said that students are consistently defined by numbers, test scores, and GPAs. That's what we're doing as a county instead of bringing individual, the individual perspective of the student out of them and what they want to see, which is why we would, not only would final exams help us prepare for college, but also those which might not go into college would depend on programs like Thomas Edison, would depend on hands-on opportunities, or even Montgomery College that would help them out with the MC Squared program. These are the things that we need to look into because students, not every student will go into a 4-year college or a 2-year college, but also making sure that, yes, progress checks do need to be revisited, relooked at, and we need to have something that accurately helps us out for college and the career.
All right, so I just have one more question. I know Nate already talked about ESOL and its role in our county, but how do you guys feel about the fact that some schools have ESOL students in one hallway and they tend to stay in that hallway, and how teachers sometimes don't speak the language that they're supposed to be helping their students understand to English? So how is that issue important to you guys? Or what would you guys want to do about that?
Sure, so there is a language barrier that's happening in our schools, and that language barrier contributes to secluded or just isolated environments in our school buildings. And so one thing that I've been doing, for example, to make sure that language isn't a barrier in our schools is translating most, if not all, of the content that I push out into Spanish and or Portuguese, and then just work off of that. That's something where in our school buildings, the reason why, another thing that I've been saying, that when we hire teachers, we should actively seek bilingual teachers, right? To make sure that when you walk into a classroom and you're a non-English speaking student, there's never that barrier saying that now you have to force yourself to integrate into the American culture or what's happening here, because that's how everybody is working. Like, that's definitely how, how Montgomery County treats so many of our students. We all, deserve a fair shot regardless if we are English speaking or not. And that's something that we overlooked when we had that mission statement. And so when we make sure that we fix the isolated environments in our schools, we also have to revisit where teachers and world language programs in our schools and where their hallways are at, and also making sure that the activities in our schools are engaging for everyone, right? So I'd hope that this video would be translated into Spanish for captions, for example, so that way the kids that be watching it on the YouTube channel are also non-English speaking students or Spanish students and so forth.
I'm really glad you brought up ESOL hallways because, we talk about segregation across the county, but we never talk about the segregation that happens within our own facilities. How students who weren't born and raised in Montgomery County, weren't born and raised speaking English, that they are packaged into this one section of the school, and all too often, just like you mentioned, they don't leave that section. When I went to Watkins Mill, they have a 20% ESOL population. That is 1 in every 5 students that does not speak English. I had to improvise. I had to change up my pitch and make it in Spanish to reach out to them to the best that I could. But unfortunately, those students are being left out of our system. And we see that in our ESOL teachers. We see that in ESOL teachers who can't communicate with students. Now, I'm totally for full immersion. I believe that it's important that these students are understanding English, but you can't expect students to learn a language and a subject that they don't understand at the exact same time. That is a problem. We need to make sure that we're hiring more bilingual ESOL teachers, or at the very minimum, giving ESOL teachers an assistant who can translate to make sure that we're bridging that communication gap with our non-English speakers, that they can understand the content and that they can be held, that they can have that assistance and one-on-one intervention so that they can perform to the best of their ability. Because, just because somebody doesn't speak your language doesn't mean that they are any dumber than someone who does speak English. And that is a reality we have to confront and we have to work toward addressing. Because right now we're not doing that.
Alrighty. Thank you. That's all we have for this evening. Thank you all for coming, and a huge thank you to the 2 candidates for sharing their plans for our great county. Drive home safely and vote wisely on the 23rd for QO and everyone else on the 24th.